Fabrizio Poli here, welcome to another episode of Biz Jet TV. Today we're going to be talking again about the coronavirus effect on aviation and the airlines, and obviously also the private jet industry, what's happening. Just an update for you here, and we'll be going to another interview I did on live TV just the other day to update you on this situation, which is concerning everybody. Business people around the world are a bit concerned, well, everybody around the world is a bit concerned. It's having a knock-on effect on aviation in particular. And you'll find out also on an update in this interview about the private jet world. But before we get into it, if you haven't subscribed to Biz Jet TV, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel, give us a thumbs up and comment below. So let's get straight into the interview I did about this coronavirus effect on aviation. Off we go.
Nearly 100,000 people have been infected with the new coronavirus across the world. While scientists are searching for a cure to the life-threatening epidemic, governments are also trying to offset its impact on their economies. The International Monetary Fund has announced a $50 billion aid package to help countries hit by the worsening outbreak. The IMF says it'll make the money available to countries with weak health systems to help them respond to the epidemic. While the IMF says the global financial system is much stronger than it was before the 2008 financial crisis, it expects global growth to dip below last year's 2.9%, citing growing uncertainty over COVID-19.
What we know from experiencing similar crises is that about 1/3 of the economic losses from the disease will be direct costs from loss of life, workplace closures and quarantines. The remaining 2/3 will be indirect, reflecting a retrenchment in consumer and business behavior and a tightening in financial markets. In other words, the impact of uncertainty.
Well, as the economic cost of the outbreak grows, the aviation industry has reported its first casualty. Liz Maddock has the details.
The virtual shutdown of the world's second biggest economy is being felt globally. As the source of the coronavirus, China's trying to stem the economic bleed.
In the era of globalization, the destinies of all countries are closely linked. When facing the epidemic, it's difficult for any country to survive alone. We have tried our best to help some countries. A friend in need is a friend indeed. We will bear it in mind.
As COVID-19 spreads around the world, more people are wanting to stay put, and demand for air travel is dropping. A slew of airlines are cancelling flights and warning profits will take a hit.
We could see the effect on revenues exceed 100 billion, around about 19% of global passenger revenues. This would be a revenue shock equivalent to what was seen in the global financial crisis.
Budget British airline Flybe is the first casualty. It's collapsed and grounded its fleet. Flybe was already in trouble. The consortium that bailed it out last year failed to secure a government loan last week and couldn't overcome problems compounded by the coronavirus.
Well, we're all absolutely sort of gutted, really. Flybe, household name, people have been flying them for 40 years, and we really tried to do everything that we possibly could back at the turn of the year. And unfortunately, though, with the situation that's developed with Corona, an already weak company, I'm afraid just hasn't been able to survive.
United Airlines is the first US outfit to cut flights, cancelling 10% of domestic legs and 20% of its international service in the coming months. To control losses, it's outlined a series of cost-cutting measures, including a hiring freeze and voluntary unpaid leave for employees. Governments around the world are stepping up screening and travel bans. Australia has added South Korea to its edict banning travellers from China and Iran, and is walking the same line as other governments, trying to act decisively while avoiding full-scale panic and further economic pain. Liz Maddock, TRT World.
Well, for more on the coronavirus's impact on the aviation sector, Fabrizio Poli joins us from Manchester in the UK now. He's an aviation analyst and aviation entrepreneur. Welcome back to Money Talks, Fabrizio. $113 billion in lost revenues because of the coronavirus outbreak. That's according to the IATA. Are you surprised by just how big that figure is?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, of course, with China playing a more important role, an active role in the economy today compared to back in 2004, 2005, when I think it was the SARS virus was out there. Obviously, the economic effect on the aviation market in particular is a lot more pronounced compared to back then, because China is more involved, more businesses more people are doing business in China, and China is doing business in more countries. So it's obvious that this is going to have an impact. It's not only on the airlines, but also on manufacturing of aircraft. I mean, Airbus manufacture a lot of their parts for the Airbus A320 and 330 in China. Those 20 factories have been shut down, so there will be delays on delivery of aircraft as well. So it's not only the airline operating, flying around with less passengers that's going to have a problem. It's also later on, once the virus is out the way, the delivery of new aircraft, in particular with Airbus, is going to be late. We already see with Boeing, with the 737 MAX, some of those parts were made in China, but because the 737 MAX project is on hold at the moment because of the accidents that happened last year, they're not as affected as Airbus are going to be affected with the deliveries, and hence the airlines that ordered these aircraft.
Now, we're seeing a growing number of airlines announce they're no longer flying to places that have been hardest hit by the coronavirus, such as China, Iran, and even Italy. Do you think airlines are overreacting here, or are they reacting in an appropriate way by announcing these cancellations?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to tell, really, because, I mean, this is a virus like a flu, and it does kill like the flu kills every year. But, it's killing those people that have weak immune systems. And it's the same with the airlines. We saw Flybe go bust just a few hours ago, and they were already a weak airline. So obviously when there's sort of a sneeze, so to speak, in the market like this, because of the coronavirus, those weak airlines go bust, because they don't have the revenue to sustain, keep going. And it's the same with the virus. So I think there's a bit of an overreaction here with not traveling. But again, we still don't know enough about this virus. So to be on the safe side, maybe it's best not to travel with people that you don't know. There has been a spike in requests for private jet travel, about 90%. But those requests haven't turned into much market growth. There's been, I think, this month, there's like 5% more flights on private jets than last year. Now, how much of that 5% is actually due to the coronavirus, I don't know. But if you are a private jet owner and you have your own jet, and you need to go to one of these places to do a deal, you can, because you have great control over it. With airlines, you may be able to get there, but then you may be able to get back. And that is a problem. But, like in all economical crisis, there's always opportunity out there, and the entrepreneur is always ready to take advantage of an opportunity.
And they sure are, although most of the population probably can't afford to hire a private jet. But I'm wondering, we're seeing a pummeling of airline stocks as well as a result of this outbreak. It really is tough for the airline industry, isn't it? They're so susceptible to really unpredictable events such as this. How can airlines safeguard their margins, their profits, even in the wake of something like a viral epidemic?
Well, for example, if you take the low-cost airline model, and a lot of people misunderstand the meaning of low-cost airline. They think it means cheap airfares. It doesn't. It means managing your company in a certain way. And I'll give you an example that happened to me. I worked as a pilot for a low-cost airline a number of years ago, and what they used to do when the pilots got to the crew room, there was no flight dispatcher to give them all the documentation for the flight. The pilots had to get to the airport 10 minutes early, print everything off themselves, brief themselves, and then off they went. Now, if you've got an airline with, 200 aircraft, you're going to need to hire a lot of flight dispatchers. If you don't hire the flight dispatcher, but ask the pilot to come in 10 minutes early and do the work himself or herself, that's one thing. How do you fly the airplane to be able to save fuel? I mean, we had a fuel policy in place which saved 200 kilos of fuel per sector. So if you manage your airline in using the low-cost system, it allows you to then have a strong balance sheet to be able to cater then for these difficult moments like this. Because unfortunately, the airline business is very, very volatile in the sense that as soon as there's a sneeze in the economy, the first thing that suffers is the airline, because what happens is companies sort of start thinking, well, shall I go on that business trip or not? Or shall I just do a Skype video call and get the meeting out the way that way without traveling, so I don't have that expense? People start thinking, well, I'm not going to have that extra holiday this year, so they don't spend money. And so the airlines end up flying around with a load factor which is, you know, below profit. And so you have to cater for that. And that's all really in the management and the day-to-day operations, in being very careful how you do things. Make sure the airplanes are flying all the time, that you buy reliable aircraft, and then manage and flown in a way that, you know, you're not spending too much money in operating the airline. And that's really the way to do it. And that's why you see airlines like Ryanair or EasyJet or JetBlue in the United States and Southwest, they survive during these difficult economical times because the way they run their business.
Okay, Fabrizio Poli in Manchester, thank you for your analysis.
Well, there you go. Coronavirus is having effects on the economy, on people's travel plans. How is it affecting you? Question out there. Please comment below. Let us know if you are traveling or not during this coronavirus crisis. Have you cancelled your flights? Have you reverted to doing conference calls on video with Zoom or Skype? Or are you traveling? And if you have a private jet and you're using a private jet, are you traveling by private jet during this coronavirus crisis? But before I let you go, I'd like to invite you to look at these other episodes here of Biz Jet TV. 3 private jet travel options. That's an interesting one. Those of you that are looking maybe to travel but don't want to travel with the airlines right now, there are different travel options with private jets. Check that video out. And also this other one about 5 things to avoid when you're buying a private jet. And this last but not least, this one here about the 3 jets you can buy for under $10 million. Well, that's all from me here. If you haven't subscribed to Biz Jet TV, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. Give us a thumbs up. And that's all from Fabrizio Poli on Biz Jet TV. And I'll see you on the next one.